I'm Joseph,
And I'm Nick.
and this is Fish Jelly.
Yep.
Oh, this will be posted on YouTube and on Spotify, the video. So we're doing that because we have to record on Zoom. Nick is in Berlin currently for the film festival. What year is it? The 73rd or the 92nd?
The 73rd. That's a
It is?
yep. Mhm.
Whoa, I guessed it the first time.
Uh,
So you arrived on Saturday?
I flew out on Valentine's Day and I arrived on
Oh,
Thursday or Wednesday, the 15th.
how was your
Uh,
flight?
uh, I got no two flights. I had no sleep. But they were fine. It was easy, which after I arrived, I found out that there were major issues with Lufthansa. I don't know if you read those news stories where they had severe interruptions during those travel days, but so a lot of people I think had a hard time.
Actually, I do know that because I went to a conference on Friday and I actually got to sit in on a really interesting like meeting because someone we know was also there. So it was kind of fun, but the people who we met with were German and they were saying that they're having issues because Lufthansa had already canceled like 300 flights. So I actually did know that. Um, and you're staying in your usual hotel.
Mhm.
How are you feeling?
I think today's that hit the wall day, and I'm borderline delirious, but I plan on getting a great night of sleep tonight.
Oh, good.
So tomorrow will be a better day. But otherwise,
Next Sunday, you'll be back, so we can use that time to talk about all the things you saw. Um, and then I'm sure we'll make a video about the best and worst from the festival.
mhm.
But I'm just going to keep this train going. So, did you ever watch Judge Mathis?
No.
Oh, I did. And then People's Court, I also watched.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, like as a kid, that shit would be on, but at home, but I didn't really
those are
watch it.
produced by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers just canceled both. Um, to be honest, I wasn't. If you would have asked me, I couldn't have confirmed that they're still on the air, but they're being canceled. My memories of People's Court is in the late '80s. The judge was Joseph Wapner.
Yeah, I remember also Rain Man, Wapner.
Oh, so I found memories of Joseph Wapner, Judge Joseph Wapner, and then Judge Mathis. I've always liked because he's a very colorful character, but he's also a very staunch, like vocal LGBTQ ally, and
Hey
it's
sis.
no, he is, and it's not available on YouTube anymore because the Wendy Williams show channel was deleted to make way for the Sherry Shepherd show. But if a person can find it, he was on Wendy Williams once, and she asked him about like the gay community, and he was very aggressive about how he's a very strong supporter. One of his children is gay, and oh, because she kind of questioned him, like, oh, I saw that you were in like the Atlanta, like the black, maybe it was like the Black Atlanta Gay Pride Parade or something. And she kind of said it like, what's up with that? And he was very like assertive that he is a very, very strong supporter. And he said some very nice things. So if I didn't already really like him because he's very colorful on his show, that just made me like him even more. I know he has a reality series with his family. I don't know if it's still on, but you know, he's been super successful, and I'm sure we'll we'll see him in some other capacity elsewhere. And then Live with Kelly and Ryan. Apparently, Ryan Seacrest is leaving. And I also couldn't have told you that show is still on the air. I don't
He's
care for Ryan Seacrest.
not at all.
And when I think about him, I think about that interview with him,
Brittany.
will.i.am, and Britney. And those two homosexuals are talking about their girlfriends. And you can see Britney Spears being like, oh wait, hold up.
She's calculating in her mind. Yeah.
The only time that lady has seemed lucid to me is during that interview when she's like, no, 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 no. I know a straight man and you're gay. Like, shout out to Grace Jones and Boomerang.
Mhm.
Um, well, so I know I've talked about me working in VIP services in a casino in Las Vegas many times, and I don't know what podcast or video has gotten more views recently that prompted more than one person to ask me like how I got a job working in VIP services. So I thought maybe I would talk about that for a second, and I hope it's interesting. But so I worked in VIP services at a casino called the Aladdin, and basically my job was to cater to all of the high-end casino guests and the talent who would perform at the 7,000 seat theater that was there. So I'm just going to tell a story. We'll see where it goes. But in 1999, I was a full-time college student, and I was working 3 part-time jobs, and it was miserable. So I needed to get like a nighttime job full time so that I wouldn't have to worry about my school schedule and I could make enough money to live. So my boyfriend at the time, who was my first boyfriend, he was the front desk supervisor at a casino off the strip. So he got me a job there, and my schedule was midnight to 10 a.m. and I worked 4 nights a week. And at a point, we had decided to move in together. So one day I go and get a U-Haul. So I like get off work at 10 a.m., go home, take a nap, pack up all my stuff in the U-Haul, and then drive it to work. Because the plan was when I get off the next day at 10 a.m., I would move in with him. And he worked like an early swing shift. So he would work like 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So I never saw this fool at work. But that day I show up to work and he's there. And he's like, we need to talk. And I was like 100% sure I was being fired for something. But he told me basically like, we're breaking up and you can't move in. So it's like, well, I have nowhere to live because I moved out of my apartment and my roommate there had someone was moving in who lived out of state. So there was no opportunity for me to move back. So me finding housing is a separate story. But I continued to work there because I needed a job. So then the Aladdin is a casino on the strip that was very popular, like in Vegas's heyday, like in the 70s. And I know Elvis, I used to know the full history of this casino, but anyway, in like 97, the Aladdin was imploded and then rebuilt as the Aladdin, like same design, same name, just bigger and better. So
Very American. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I apply to work in VIP services because I knew that's the job you want. Because in the other casino I was working in, those people seem to have it made. So I apply and they actually call me in for an interview. I do the interview, and then a few days later, HR calls me and says, you're not being offered the job. The feedback that they received was that I didn't have the look they wanted. So that's a bummer, right? Like, oh, I don't look good enough to work in this, whatever. But that's Vegas. I mean, the things that cocktail service have to go through, it's not uncommon to be told that you don't have the look.
But I do think it was more about being gay than how
we could definitely throw that in there, but and I was the only, ultimately I did end up working there, but I was the only gay person. But anyway, they tell me, that it's a no, but the manager who interviewed me recommended that I interview with the front desk. And I was bummed out because basically my little 21-year-old brain is like, they just told me I'm ugly. And then they're telling me I have to go work at the front desk, which I hated. I hated working at the front desk at the other hotel. People are awful and mean. And I could tell a million stories about that. But anyway, I took the job because I couldn't work at the same place where my ex-boyfriend dogged me the hell out. And it paid like 50% more. So that's great. So the property wasn't done being built yet. So they told me when we're like 2 months out from opening, we'll have everyone start training. So like a month goes by and they give us a date. So I show up for my first day of training, and it's not at the casino because the casino is not fully built, like 2,500 rooms, 50 stories high. Well, technically like 40, but they, some of the rooms don't have windows in them, so it wasn't ready to be occupied. So we had to train in this big warehouse by the airport in like May and June in Vegas. So it was hot as hell in this warehouse. So I show up for the first day and everyone's there, like housekeeping, reservations, call center, front desk, VIP services is there. So when we show up, we're all in our little groups and we have regions of the like designated areas. And immediately when I saw the VIP people, it was clear like I was not what they were looking for. Like two of the guys were actual models. The women were gorgeous. One of them you've met before. So I didn't feel that bad because it was like, I'm not playing with these fools. But I start working, and this is where I get to the story of how I got the job. So the most important thing to know about working in a casino in Vegas, and keep in mind, this is 23 years ago, so who knows how things are now, but seniority was the most important thing because that really determined your schedule and where you worked. So you can imagine, like, if you're a cocktail server, if you're working like mornings in the penny slots area, you're making very different money from the women who are working Saturday nights in the high limits area. We're talking $200 versus $2,000. So people are very like concerned about seniority. So we train, and then right before we're supposed to start working in the actual casino, they say, okay, we're going to do a lottery because all of you started on the same day. And I believe for my area, there were 80 employees, 80. And I pull number 74. So I'm at the bottom. So the shift I get is midnight to 8 a.m. with Mondays and Thursdays off. So not only did I work graveyard, but I had split days off. But it turned out to be a gift because VIP services, they were done at midnight. So anything relating to like high-end casino guests and the executives who deal with them had to go through the front desk. So an example would be, you know, some $1 million player calls down at 1 a.m. and they want a limo to the strip club. We're supposed to contact the executive and say like, hey, this is what they want. And then they're supposed to get it all done. So I was working, there's like a skeleton crew at that hour. And the person I would mainly work with was this woman who I have a million stories about, but she was very like strict. Like, that's not how we're supposed to do things. Like, because the executives would call and say, can you do it? But we weren't allowed to use the system that handles like gaming, like seeing what people gamble and how much money we can give them. So we're not supposed to do anything. But then very quickly, like as the weeks go by and I got used, because I'm the only guy down there for 5 nights a week, they would call me and say, hey, do you mind just like, can you log in? And that's how I learned how to read like casino play and how to like comp stuff. And even though I wasn't supposed to. And when high-end guests would come in after midnight, they would give us the keys, because it's also important to know that we had like a private entrance for VIP guests. And it still exists. If you go to, the Aladdin is now called Planet Hollywood. If you go through valet, there's an area that's like a private like check-in, or you can go to like a private lounge, private elevator to like the high roller suites. So if it was like a random Thursday or Wednesday at 3 a.m. and a VIP shows up, I would have to be available at that private entrance to show them to their room and do all the stuff. So this is leading to the story of how I got the job. So one night, STEVIE NICKS was supposed to arrive because she was performing at our casino. And they were like, you know, make sure you're there, make sure you take them up, go check the room first. So it's like 1:30 a.m. She shows up with her assistant. I take them up, you know, I wait outside the suite and say like, please check it and make sure that there isn't anything you need. And the assistant the suite, to normal people, it was a beautiful suite, but it had like a foyer and then you have to enter the next room to get into the main part of the suite. STEVIE NICKS didn't even walk into the suite. She was just waiting in the foyer. Her assistant went in and immediately came out and said, this is not going to work. And I'm like, haven't even been working a month there. No one is available. I've already learned that the executives who are supposed to be available either are asleep in their office or they go home. And if we call them on their cell phones, they'll just tell us what to do. So I'm like, I don't know who to call because the one person I called wasn't available. And the assistant's like, this is not going to work. She wants a villa at the Bellagio. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about anything. So I said, okay, let me figure something out. So they waited in the VIP lounge, and she's like, the assistant's like, if we can't get what we need, we're going to leave. So I'm like, oh my God. So long story short, call a few things. I do end up getting her a villa at the Bellagio. So of course I'm waiting for the next day when I come in to be told like, I'm in trouble. I don't know. But I was actually praised for like taking care of the situation on my own. And then they told me that if I wanted, I could work in VIP services on the phone, like not face to face. So I did take that job and then very quickly was able to make my way into working like in the lounge. And then of course I have a million stories about that. But it was not a very it wasn't an easy road to get into the VIP lounge, but I always think like, oh, if Stevie Nicks wouldn't have shown up and been difficult, I probably wouldn't have gotten the job. And it turned out, the 4 years I spent doing that job really changed my life. And again, I could talk for hours and hours, but that's the basic story. Nowadays, things are very different because most casinos on the strip are owned by like two big entities. But back then, like the Aladdin was privately owned. So we got away with murder. And that's really what made it such a nice opportunity for me. But that's the end of my story. We can move on to films released we didn't cover. So it looks like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was re-released.
It was, yeah. I haven't seen that since the year it came out. So
I've never seen it.
You haven't? Oh, we have it on 4K.
Oh, we should watch it.
Yeah, with Michelle Yeoh.
Oh, she's in it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And you know who directed it? Ang Lee.
I didn't know that either. Something called Emily.
You passed on this, which is why we didn't watch it before I left. But it's a biopic about Emily Bronte, directed by Frances O'Connor, and starring Emma Mackey, who is the young vixen in Death on the Nile, the Kenneth Branagh version, of course. Yeah, and you know who Emily Bronte is.
I'd have to look her up.
She wrote Wuthering Heights.
Oh, the Bronte sisters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which there were three.
And I've read Wuthering Heights, and I still don't know, remember.
Sister wrote Jane Eyre, and then there was Anne, who wrote novels that people don't keep up with as much. But
well, I'm not the literate one here, but yes.
There's a 1979 French film called The Bronte Sisters, starring Isabelle Huppert and Isabelle Adjani as two of those sisters.
Ooh, is it good?
Oh yeah, I love it, of course.
I would watch that. Oh, speaking of, if you want to put your camera or your laptop down, you have an Isabelle Huppert shirt.
I do. It was a gift given to me, not by Isabelle.
Wow.
And the Bronte sisters had it was a highly dysfunctional living situation, and they had a brother. God, I'm forgetting the brother's name now, but he's played by Pascal Gregory in that 1970s film. Anyway,
something called Hidden Blade.
Yes, directed by Air Cheng. It's starring Tony Leung, who's of course a huge star, and I think his best works in Wong Kar-wai's films, but that came out.
Something called Pacification.
Pacifiction.
Oh, Pacifiction. I'm sorry.
I reviewed that out of Cannes last year, which I really liked, starring Benoit Magimel, and it was directed by Albert Serra, who's a director I really like. I think you watched the preview because we discussed covering it before I left, but we didn't get to it.
Return to Seoul.
I think you would like this as well. if you ever get around to watching it. But directed by Davey Shu, it's premiered in Cannes in certain regard. It has a kind of a standout breakout lead performance from Park Ji-min, who plays this this Korean woman who's adopted by a French couple as a baby, and she spends the film in a very kind of interesting turn of events, getting back to her bio parents.
And lastly, Tell It Like a Woman.
This is a 7-part film
Ooh.
each directed by a different woman, about women. And it's notable because Diane Warren finally received an Oscar nod for the, I think, best song.
Oh,
I don't know if
moving
you
on.
remember. I think
Oh,
that there's a habit of Diane Warren or going around to Oscar related parties, selling her, kind of talking herself up. And it finally paid off.
also, but Andrea Riseborough can't.
Well,
Moving on to projects of interest, Relay,
oh yeah, let me look at my notes.
David Mackenzie, Lily James,
Oh
Riz
yeah,
Ahmed.
I like David Mackenzie a lot, and I think it's a thriller and starring Riz Ahmed and Lily James, who I don't really care for Lily James. I think she's boring, but I do tend to like David Mackenzie's films.
Shout out to Riz Ahmed. He used to be our neighbor.
Yeah, in West. Well, I don't know if he actually lived there. I was just seeing he could have been going there to hook up for all I know.
Oh, you just told all his business.
West
um,
Hollywood.
Mean Girls stage musical.
Yeah, Tina Fey is developing a Mean Girl stage musical, just what we need. And I believe Amy Poehler's also returning, and a couple other cast members. Not, you know who, Lindsay.
Lilo. Well, I'm sure people will be excited about that. The Leader.
It's a film about the Heaven's Gate cult, directed by Michael Bell.
Ooh,
And Tim Blake Nelson and Vera Farmiga are going to play those fun cult leaders.
I would be interested in that. The Fountains of Paradise.
A Pitchapong Weerasthakul, the Thai auteur, who directed such things as Uncle Boonmi, who can recall his past lives, and which won the Palme d'Or. Cemetery Splendor, which is a favorite, Tropical Malady. He is apparently going to be adapting an Arthur C. Clarke novel. It hasn't been announced for sure which one. I'm sure that it'll be an original take on it, but maybe The Fountains of Paradise. But that's exciting news.
Things we watch for fun. So I watched the new block of episodes released for the Netflix series The Upshaws, which
Okay.
features Wanda Sykes, Kim Fields, Mike Epps. I really do like that show. It's pretty basic, but I like that it doesn't shy away from like more adult content, in contrast to the show on Netflix, which I also like, with Loretta Devine and one of the Maori sisters. That one is definitely a little more,
That's Family Values.
yeah, something like that. So yeah, but I if a person hasn't checked out the Upshaws and you like any of those three people, I would recommend it. You watched Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Yeah, I've never seen it before. So I watched it on the plane here, which means I didn't see the infamous penis shot.
I was just gonna ask, did they show it on the plane? And they didn't.
No, which is fine. I don't need to see Jason Segel's penis. But it was entertaining. I liked it well enough. For such a, you know, landmark comedy of 2008, because I remember it was very popular. I guess it's fine. It's directed by Nicholas Stoller, who of course did Bros.
Well, as you know, I used to work in a salon where we had a library of films that would play on repeat. And Forgetting Sarah Marshall they were random, but we could also select. So we would often select Forgetting Sarah Marshall because the way people would react because we had like the full version when Jason Segel's presented nude was always a fun moment. You watched The Breakup?
Yeah, on Valentine's Day. Directed by Pete.
Are you trying to tell me something?
No, Jesus. Not with that movie.
Oh, which movie would you choose to show me when you're over me?
We Won't Grow Old Together.
Oh. We're
um,
both old, so there you go. You better pick a new one. Anyway, the breakup. I'm not familiar.
I'm not old. I'm just fine. The Breakup, directed by Peyton Reed, whose debut was Bring It On, which I still have yet to see.
Oh my gosh, you mentioned that in the video, and there were so many comments about, we can't believe you haven't seen Bring It On.
I just never. I think the group I was hanging with in high school, that was not a cool thing to watch because so I just never got around to it. So I will remedy that soon. But I remember when The Breakup came out, because I
Who's
think
in it?
Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn.
Oh, maybe I have seen it.
Because we had just reviewed Ant-Man and Peyton Reed directed all three Ant-Man movies.
Oh,
So
that's the video. Yes.
which I loathe those. So I'm like, let me see if this man actually had something to say at one point. But I remember that when that came out because I think that's right when the breakup was happening with Brad Pitt.
Mm.
But and the breakup's fine. There are a lot of interesting things. It's funny looking back, just what 15 or how many years ago, that how they were trying to kind of shoehorn queer characters into these kind of broad comedies. Like what's his name, John Michael Higgins, I think that's his name. Who's in that Fran Drescher series about when she married a gay husband.
Yes.
And he's in the Christopher Guest film Licorice Pizza. He plays Jennifer Aniston's gay brother, who apparently gay people can't read the room. And then Justin Long plays Jennifer Aniston's coworker, who at this day and time we call that character non-binary.
Oh,
Very interesting portrayal. And then Anne Margaret is completely wasted. She's in like one scene as Jennifer Aniston's mom. It's like, if you're going to hire Anne Margaret, could you give her something to do?
wow. Yeah.
Anyway, it was okay.
Okay. Unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section, and there are some honorable mentions. So I'll start
Oh,
with honorable mentions. So, Bruce Willis's condition has worsened. He has that frontotemporal dementia. So it looks like he's in bad shape. He's
I
only
love that.
7.
Yeah.
That makes me sad. I mean, I know it affects a lot of people, but you know, I also, it's like to have a memory of someone. Um, and he's looked good for so long too. To think that he's not in good shape right now is sad. And of course, I have very fond memories of him and moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd. Actually, I had a breakfast with my mom yesterday, and we were talking about him and moonlighting, and so yeah. And then Jimmy Carter, he's going to start hospice care.
I saw that headline as well. Yeah, but he's like 98.
He's been kicking for a long time. Yes, he has, but yeah. And then um Tom Sizemore, he's in critical condition. Like he's in an ICU right now because he suffered a brain aneurysm.
Oh, well,
And we were just talking about Tom Sizemore, and I couldn't remember why.
Devil in a Blue Dress.
That's right. Devil in a Blue Dress. His character he does a very good job of being vile.
Yeah,
But
typecast in that
yeah,
way.
but that's also very sad.
Yeah.
And then for people who have passed, George
Uh,
T. Miller. Oh, sorry.
there's somebody, I don't think, I read right as I was leaving my last film that Richard Belzer died.
I have that on my list. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I
So
thought,
George T. Miller.
yeah, there are two Australian directors named George Miller, and one of them died. I think what was he 82? He is best known for The Man from Snowy River and The Neverending Story 2. So it's not George. It's not the Mad Max George Miller, 3,000 Years of Longing. And he has a film that I own called The Aviator, starring Christopher Reeve, which I
Not the Aviator. So he is just
yeah
like second rate everything.
yeah. But he died.
Well, I'm sure he'll be missed. You mentioned Richard Belzer, who I think, well, I recognize him like his face. Like I know he was a comedian, and I know he's on like a cop
I think
type
he's on
on the show.
Homicide: Life on the Street. and something else. But
I was reading that like a longtime friend of his is the one who confirmed his death, and he said the friend said that Richard Belzer's last words were "F you, mother effer." I have to watch my language because it'll be on YouTube, but that's a good way to go out.
yeah, well, I think I read somewhere, weren't Joan Crawford's last words were "Don't you dare pray for me" or something.
Those will be your last words.
Oh yeah, since apparently never mind.
Oh wow. And then lastly, Raquel Welch died.
Yeah, that bummed me out.
Yeah. I feel like if you were here, we would have done like a poll on like a Raquel Welch movie.
We can still do that because there's a bunch of stuff that I have. She did this Western that I own called, I think it's called Hannah Caldwell or something. I've never seen Mother Jugs and Speed with her and Bill Cosby.
Yeah, we should do that then.
I mean, Myra Breckenridge is, a fantastic film in my opinion because.
Well, and I even read the book.
Yeah,
which is
too.
Like, I don't read very much, so I did read that book.
And its sequel, Myron Breckenridge, yeah.
So, but I mean, just like an otherworldly beauty, like when you talk about someone being snatched, that's Raquel Welch. And then even as she aged, she had a wig line and the wigs were crunchy. And there are lots of, if you Google like Raquel Welch wig tape, there are a lot of pictures of her with her, because she, lace front wigs are more mainstream now, but when she started, getting used to adhering them, there are a lot of photos of her with her lace not being glued down properly, but that lady looked amazing and had such a fantastic career. Do you know she wrote a memoir?
Yeah, I remember watching interviews when she was promoting it.
I'm sure she's had the most fascinating life. And she was only like in her early 80s, right? Yeah. Well, moving on. So our secret film is just sort of what was convenient. So
Yeah.
on the plane to Berlin, you watched the 1998 American science fiction psychological thriller film directed by Barry Levinson called Sphere.
Uh-huh.
What do I know Barry Levinson from?
The Bay, that found footage horror film. I know you've seen.
Yeah.
I think, didn't he do Rain Man?
Well, maybe that's how he got Dustin Hoffman to do this.
Well, he also directed Wag the Dog with Dustin Hoffman, which he made on the fly because Sphere was going through so many production delays. So yes, he likes Dustin. His son, Sam Levinson, is also a notable director who was the one that was dating Ellen Barkin for a long time and was much younger than him. But Barry Levinson, he just had something else. He had the Survivor with Ben Foster. We just watched some other Barry Levinson film. Oh, Disclosure, which is also Michael Crichton, based on a Michael Crichton novel.
Is that with Nicolas Cage?
Demi Moore and Michael Douglas.
Oh, what's the movie with Nicolas Cage and Gina Gershon?
Oh, that's Inconceivable.
Oh, okay. I did enjoy that movie, but it's not good.
Yeah.
Did you dislike Sphere as much as I did?
I hated it, but Sharon Stone's beautiful face was staring out at me on the plane, and it came up. Somebody had referenced this in a chat on a different video we recorded, and I hadn't seen it since I rented it with my parents, and I remember my dad hating it.
I think
it made me want to revisit it since it's been however long since I've seen it.
I think I hated it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
The dialogue is unbearable. It's so remedial and repetitive. Like if I had to write something, it would sound like this. Like it's just like someone with no I just could. So the dialogue's terrible. Then I think the cast is too shiny. It just is so distracting. You have Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, Samuel L. Jackson, Liev Schreiber, Queen Latifah. It's just like it doesn't make any sense. And Dustin Hoffman is probably the most annoying one.
He is so terrible. And you cannot tell me that a woman that's brilliant and beautiful as the Sharon Stone character is would have lost her mind over an affair with that man.
That is probably, I mean, that was driving me crazy. Like, not only were they in a relationship, but he drove her to insanity. Like, like like suicide? No, not
And she was his patient, and I hate that. I hate how, again, this was a highly compromised film production, and I think nobody involved was really happy with the final product.
I'm gonna read the log line. A spaceship is discovered under 300 years worth of coral growth at the bottom of the ocean. So there is a spacecraft that is detected under this coral reef. And then there's so much talking, so much exposition, so much explaining. But we find out that based on the rate of growth for coral reef and the position of the spacecraft, that it has been down there for 288 years. So of course, we would assume that it's an alien spacecraft. So a team is assembled, the characters I just mentioned, to go down there to check it out, which already to me seems stupid. Why wouldn't there be like trained military personnel, like Marines and underwater experts? But no, we have like a psychologist, a marine biologist. Like, why?
But explain why that team was assembled, how that protocol was developed. Do you remember?
Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman had written a paper for the Bush administration. Never mind that this is in between two different Bush administrations.
Right.
I just pulled some shit out of his ass to say what we would need to do, basically, if we had to be introduced to an alien life form, and it would be that you would get these people that he names.
I mean, how dumb is that? It's
so stupid.
It's beyond, like, it's so asinine that I almost expected this to be a comedy.
Well, and then you forget that Peter Coyote is the head of this agency that is tasking. It has the one that's called this team, assembled this team.
Okay.
He always plays a villain.
He's like the captain of this thing. And I thought his acting, I mean, I don't know who this person is, but I think the dialogue was so bad that his acting just came across like so crunchy. But anyway, these fools go down there. And the only cool part about the movie, like that gave me any sort of tension, is they're roaming around this airtight spacecraft, like 20 leagues under the sea or whatever fathoms. I don't know the terms, but
in the Jules Verne book is a reference. Yeah.
They get into the spacecraft and they're, creaking around, and they come across a trash can, and the trash can says trash basura. So like in English and Spanish. So clearly this is not a foreign spacecraft. So then immediately you think, oh, time travel. And that's what it is. It's basically that some team in the future crash landed on Earth, in the 1700s. And we find out that they got sucked into a black hole and they were looking for something. And what they're looking for is a sphere. Oh my God, the scene where Lee Schreiber is talking about some artist drawing a perfect circle. It's just like, what is the purpose of any of this dialogue?
I just left a movie where he played Henry Kissinger. Anyway, he was probably more grating to me than Dustin Hoffman in this movie.
Well, I mean, they're very close as to how bad it is. So we find out, to wrap it up, that this sphere has like powers. Like if someone goes into the sphere, they end up developing this power where, like, their dreams come true. But in this movie, it's manifesting as their nightmares come true. So we basically see like all of these people's fears come to life and start killing each other because of it. But really only like 3 people end up dying, because the final 3 are Sam Jackson, Sharon Stone, and Dustin Hoffman. And they're able to destroy the sphere, blow up the spacecraft, and get to the top of the ocean. And then they're rescued by some ships, which I thought was so crazy, because we're told that the explosion that's going to occur is going to be like a nuclear, like an extinction level event type situation. And then when their when their submarine gets to the top of the water, there are like no ripples in the ocean. Wouldn't you expect like a tsunami? Anyway, the end. Well, no, it's not.
They were trapped down there because of this storm raging on top of.
That's right. But the final scene is that now that they've been rescued, they're in quarantine and they know that they're going to be questioned. Like, what happened? Several people died, like everything blew up. What happened? And they make a pact to say that they're going to forget about the sphere.
Because they logically deduce that that's the only way that mankind won't be doomed, or that they can survive, because we can't get to a point in time where humans are looking for the sphere, so we have to forget about it. Yeah, they just, and then the sphere manifests itself out of the ocean. Metaphorically, no, it doesn't, because people can see it. They ask what that is, to destroy itself in the sky.
So yeah, you're right. I missed that. The sphere is not destroyed. In the very end, like the final shot with bad CGI is this sphere shooting out of the ocean into like space. There's so much about this movie I didn't like. The story is ridiculous. The cast is ridiculous. The writing is terrible.
How it's edited, it feels like a TV movie because it's broken up into these chapter segments that do nothing to
have no purpose.
Flow, final analysis.
And then, like sometimes being derivative is good. Like in this instance, if you're going to do a movie like this, it needs to feel like Aliens or like The Thing, or, it needs to have that dark, like you're submerged. There was no tension at all because these characters are so ridiculous. So one big plot point I didn't mention is that Sam Jackson, they realized that he went into the sphere and that the bad things that are happening are coming from his like dreams. But then ultimately they realized that all of them ended up going into the sphere and a lot of things are happening. So I thought that like Sam Jackson's characterization was ridiculous because immediately it's like, because they think that the alien is communicating with them via code and they decode it. And so the alien's talking to them in the most rudimentary language. And then
call me Jerry.
Call me Jerry. And then there's a scene where Dustin Hoffman is reviewing like the code and he realizes they mixed up a letter. And so really it's call me Harry, which is Sam Jackson. But
and then the code for how they do the thing also is they deduce how it's a numerical code based on a keyboard that is viewed from the perspective of the sphere.
So stupid. And then if they misspelled Jerry, wouldn't a bunch of words, like any word that contained H or A, be misspelled? I just thought that was such a dumb plot point. But
it's like, stop calling me Jerry. I'm angry.
I'm just going to quickly go through my notes. There is so much talking. Did you not think so?
Yeah. And it's not interesting either. It's just like chatter. When
I realized Sharon and Dustin had been a couple and that he drove her to insanity, I had to stop the movie and do something else for a minute. Actually, I had to stop the movie and then read the Wikipedia entry to make sure that I had heard things correctly and that that's where this is going.
That's Halpern. And then I also really don't appreciate how they kind of make her seem like they really try to sabotage her character. Because who else does it? Peter Coyote confronts Dustin Hoffman like, this crazy bitch.
That's my next note, because they confront her about like her like drug use, and she's like, well, every once in a while I take a piece of Xanax, which made me think of a piece of a burger.
Just take the whole pill.
Yeah, they're just totally, I mean, the writing of this character and making her like this hysterical woman who's like went insane over this homely ass man, Dustin Hoffman. And she's an educated woman, like a doctor, a marine biologist. And they make her, so I'm not even going to go through them all, but I wrote down so many lines of dialogue that are just terrible. Again, the casting is so distracting, too many personalities. We have a scene where they're all in the elevator together and they've consumed helium. So they're talking with like the helium voice. And I just thought, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Then we
Um, Sharon Stone's performance is like 1970s era Liz Taylor. I'm gonna give it to you, is what
but
she's
it's
doing.
not convincing at all. There's a moment where she's walking around and she's like, she's so flat sometimes, like, this is great, guys. Wow. Like, that's how she's talking.
Oh, but by the end of the film, she's kind of unhinged, and to
Yes.
me, that was giving like Liz Taylor in the driver's seat.
I did, but the movie had a budget, and I do think it shows. The CGI for 1998 isn't the worst. I mean, the worst part is when we see the sphere leave at the end. But when they realize that it's a time capsule, or like that there's time travel, and they see all the dates on like the touch screen, and then we get like the unknown entry montage CGI, I thought that looked kind of cool. Um, Queen Latifah looked like she didn't want to be in the movie. And
Okay,
then,
let's talk
okay,
about
go.
her death scene.
Yes, because, well, yes, you can talk about it because I was going to mention what she says before that. So she goes underwater and she's confronted by a bunch of jellyfish.
Oh,
But
that was it. Yeah.
but before that happens, she's talking and she is so flat. She's like, "Wow, this is tranquil. This is really beautiful." Like, and
Like,
then but then when she gets confronted by the jellyfish, she's screaming like, "They're stinging me through my suit. They're stinging me."
yeah,
It's it's uncomfortably bad. And then we see Queen Latifah's dead body like on the autopsy table, all bloated and crazy. I thought that looked crazy. And then ironically, Queen Latifah was recently on, you were in the room when I watched it, I think, where she was on maybe like the Drew Barrymore show. And Drew Barrymore was like, hey, um, I was reading that you have like a no death clause in your contracts. And
because it set it up.
And Queen Latifah was like, yeah, because earlier in my career, they would always kill me off. So I'm like, well, this movie would be probably one of the examples she would cite. Like she's in this horrible movie where she's the first one to die.
Yeah, in a film that there's not that many deaths. But just how they had to speed the jellyfish up because, it's jellyfish. But they leave Schreiber's treating her like she's so stupid, like move through them. They can't do anything.
The way these scientists are acting, like these educated people, is so outrageous. Then
And then
Sharon Stone's describing when she's doing the autopsy, she's showing like she's pulling out pieces of the jellyfish from Queen Latifah's dead body. And at one point she says that these are not God's creation, which I thought was a really weird thing for a marine biologist to say, but
yeah, uh-huh.
um,
Like all creatures, great and small, Sharon. I forgot what I was going to say.
there's a scene where Leave is talking to Dustin and he's jealous of, because he and Sam Jackson are both like scientists. I believe they're both physicists. And he's jealous of Sam Jackson because Sam Jackson's like resume is more impressive. And he's telling Dustin, in physics, if you haven't done it by the time you're 35, chances are you never will. Like, because he was talking about Einstein accomplishing whatever at 20, whatever. And like, why are we even hearing aren't we trapped underwater with this like alien sphere? Why are we talking about you and your career right now?
Oh, well, or the scene where to ask Sam Jackson, like, when did you get your first PhD? And it beat him like by a year. And it's like these people.
Oh, so corny. So corny. Um, I thought it was a funny, because the way the alien Jerry is talking to them is via like this computer monitor with like the words being typed out. And it's very rudimentary, like caveman language. And at one point, someone says, if this translation is right, this alien sounds like an idiot, which I thought was funny because when we find out it's Sam Jackson talking.
Or just Sharon Stone say like, well, that's interesting because there's got to be stupid ones. What I was thinking of was how the nightmare sequences are playing out. It's much like that scene in Witches of Eastwick, another George Miller
Oh,
reference.
what's the movie with Kiefer Sutherland and Kevin Bacon, where like their worst memories, like they're pushing death or
Oh, Flatliners.
flatliners? I feel like this movie was trying to be like, if you mix aliens or the thing with like flatliners, like there was so much potential to do something interesting. And instead we spend so much time with the three primary people just hamming it up. Like I don't understand.
It I think it's at a similar level as something like Virus with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, yes. Yeah, actually. Um, the
It made me
captain.
also want to rewatch
Oh no, want
Supernova.
to rewatch what?
Supernova with Angela Bassett.
Oh, I would like to watch that.
Which Walter Hill had his name taken off of.
There's a moment when the captain is explaining air pressure to leave, which was so stupid to me. Like he's a physicist. Why are you explaining how air pressure? He's like if you don't do this, it's gonna like this is gonna collapse. And it's like, yeah, I know how this works.
It's because he's explaining it to the audience who are not physicists, I
Oh
guess.
God, I know. Just like the writing is just like hitting you over the head. Getting back to what you said about them making Sharon crazy, the captain literally says like, "Don't listen to her; she's crazy." And that's after he finds out that she attempted suicide by taking 20 yellows, which is a reference to a drug called Nambutal. Um, I did think Lee's death was pretty gruesome because like a fiery like
Oh, under the door. Yeah.
yes, like he some heavy piece of machinery falls on him, but he's like on top of a grate, and then underneath the grate, like a fire ignites. So we see him like trapped, and then like his head is burning. That was pretty gruesome. There's also a really interesting close-up shot of Sharon Stone. Do you recall that? Where like the camera pans in on her? I thought that was cool.
Apparently, she had asked the cinematographer, she was very concerned with looking a certain way on camera. And the cinematographer was like, we're trapped underwater.
That's
Uh,
interesting because I hated her hair and I hated that her hair looked like it because that hairstyle she has required styling. Even though it looks messy, it requires product. So it's like, why do you have like this tousled pixie with these terrible highlights? Did you notice she had like individual pieces that were clearly foiled? Like, who thought like they needed one highlight right here? I hated her hair. Okay, can you talk about the scene? Can you talk about the scene where Sam Jackson is reading 20 Leagues Under the Sea and then Dustin has this vision of all the books?
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then he says like he was scared after page 87. So then he finds all these books and after page 87 they're all blank and that's when they realize that it's his nightmares coming to reality.
And that the thing crushing them is the Kraken creature from that book, which happened on page 80.
This movie's not sophisticated enough to play with this sort of like psychological like these mind tricks. It just feels so dumb.
It's just dull. It more than it is even dumb. It's flaccid and banal, but
I don't have anything else to say about this movie. I'm glad that we got to both watch the same movie for this podcast, but this shit was not it at all.
I know. Well, of the three movies I watched on the plane, I felt like this was more interesting to talk about than the other two comedies I watched. But
Sure, sure. What would you give this movie?
like a
I would
one.
give it 1 out of 5. Um, it
It's
was
like
it was hard
Virus.
to get through.
It was hard to sit through, even on a plane, because it's like 2 hours and 14 minutes, right?
It's long, yeah. I had to
And
watch it in 3 segments.
I never read the book, but I was a Michael Crichton fan. But you know, the '90s were there was a Crichton craze, right? Because of Jurassic Park. Um, and I remember in '97, I had very high hopes that they were going to make the his book Airframe into a movie starring Sigourney at one point. That never happened, but
Mm.
we got Sphere instead. I don't know.
Well, that's all for that. So we will be back next Sunday to hear about your goings on, your escapades and whatnot. And then we have 3 reviews coming out this week for Cocaine Bear and some other things I don't remember.
Juniper and I think Linoleum.
That's right, Juniper and Linoleum. So we have some stuff coming, and then Saturday we won't have a live video because you'll be flying back that day, I think. But I
Yes.
have another film from a Black female director in the can that I will drop on Saturday.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people?
uh, power to them, power to the people.
Love, peace, and hair grease. All right. Well, ta-ta for now.